Well, while we're talking about feel good stuff, how about let's talk nuclear war?
Oh my God, nuclear war. Yeah.
I mean, how's in your opinion, how's the Ukraine conflict shaping people's attitude to the world markets and money wise?
Yeah. The problem is you can't base your decisions on what is happening in the war based on any information that's coming through. Both sides have been putting out so much misinformation to put a narrative about that they're strong and winning. So Ukraine's been busted putting out so many false stories and so much stuff, and then Russia's been busted putting out so many false stories and false narratives. And so both sides have had and launched a very strong misinformation campaign. I guess the issue is that the Ukrainian side gets amplified through us here in the West because the West is siding with Ukraine, but I'm sure through China and through other countries that are kind of aligned with Russia or very neutral, like India, I'm sure they're hearing some of the Russian misinformation campaign. I'm sure they're thinking that it's going very differently. So imagine around the world that it's probably split between which country you think is being more successful and which eventual outcome you think is going to exist. Now, nobody wants a war and everything's crap. Like, you don't want it to happen. I'm seeing some, so for that reason, because there's two narratives coming out pretty strongly. Us here in the West, we're seeing the Ukraine narrative and that, everything's going well there, and we've got to do everything. And even so far as the Nazi militia, that's the Azov brigade, you can buy their memorabilia on Amazon now. It's amazing, first time in a long time. It looks like that's the big push for us, and so people are sort of very concerned that Putin's a madman, he's going to drop some bombs, and he probably is a madman, and he may drop some bombs, and that may well happen. Nobody knows except him, But there's so much talk and chatter about it. I'm fearful again. If the last 2 years has taught us anything, it is that we should take with a grain of salt anything that is put on the news or social media and through newspapers and journals and things, because it's a tool being used by people, right? So I don't know. It's affecting markets substantially, and oil is the big one.
So not just the price of oil, but oil stocks as well. Like, are there certain areas that you would stay away from as a financial advisor, or on the other side, are there areas that you would be gung-ho about?
It's a really good question, isn't it? In times of war, historically, stock markets have been flattened, as in, like, not decimated, but they have just like ground along at a certain point. That hasn't happened yet to the stock market. The stock market's feeling good, especially the New York Stock Exchange. However, that is because there's a lot of war machines companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and this is their time to shine. So just like the last 2 years was the drug companies' time to shine in the New York Stock Exchange, and now it's the war machines' time to shine. It's what, Biden is sending over lethal aid, sort of very gentle term, isn't it? Which really means rockets and stuff like tanks and things. And so it's either the American taxpayer buying those rockets and tanks and planes and helicopters and then giving them as in aid to Ukraine, or they're lending them, or they're taking a war bond. Either way, that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Boeing and Airbus and all those guys get paid. Like some that's on tick, they're getting paid, and their stocks are increasing. Their stocks are pulling up the stock market pretty significantly. So it's really interesting to see where those things are going. But there's shortages on stuff. I predict that the share market won't be able to sustain that for very much longer, which is not. It's not a super strong prediction, is it? The sort of share markets normally go down in the winter in Australia, anyway. So you could pretty well say that you think that would be happening.
So you got a bearish sort of outlook in the short term for the markets then?
I do think that the markets are going to be troubled in reality, especially if it goes on longer, and if we see a decoupling of the US dollar from oil, that probably will send some questions through the money system saying, well, we all used to kind of want to hold US dollars because they were the biggest, strongest country that could always pay its debts back. And if, but they always were oil backed. And so we need oil and we need the US. And so the US could kind of borrow more than anyone else could because they were always the ultimate country that was good for the loan. If that thinking or feeling goes away, if the other countries go, you know what, I don't know if the US can pay their dollars. And I think if China wants to start selling oil in yuan as opposed to US dollars or in rubles or gold-backed rubles or something like that, and India buys their oil from Russia or Saudi Arabia sells oil to China in yuan, I think that will have a bigger effect on the stock markets than anything else going on, because the US dollar is backed by oil, and that was the deal they had with Saudi Arabia a long time ago in lieu for army protection. Like that was the deal. That was made in the 70s, and so if that decouples, then America's gone over and had a deal with Iran to get some more oil there. That's not a great thing to happen. So these are probably the things. It's the who can. It feels like we're back to the Bush days, right? So who controls the oil? Their country looks the strongest, and therefore their stock market looks the strongest. And if the US can no longer do that and realize that is eventually then the decline of the US, then the stock market can't keep getting propped up, because the stock market's propped up on borrowed money. And so if the US looks like it can't keep borrowing money because no one believes it's going to repay it back, then the stock market knows that it's out of juice. That's the issue. It might take 5 years, but there could be some reckoning coming. And I think that the US, normally when they're put into a corner like this, they normally go get the troops out, boots on ground somewhere. They'll want to keep some strength going on. That's how they historically have kept strength army.